Hello and welcome to the second ITESOFT Insider View. I'm John Stovold.
I'm Rory Coleman-Smith.
And today we're going to be taking a look at ITESOFT Streamline for Invoices, the accounts payable automation solution from ourselves, hosted in the cloud and offering some of the latest technology in a manner and a way that's suitable for businesses of all sizes, offering far more flexibility and far more quality into a traditional capture process, handling supplier invoices.
Yeah, so first of all, we're going to look at the first part of the process, I guess, which is capture. So we're looking at a demonstration of the omni-channel capture element, which means capturing from every channel. So, you know, from an email, from a scan, from a file, a photograph from your iPhone, whatever.
Supplier Portal upload.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although we'll get onto Supplier Portal, I'm sure.
Yeah, we will indeed. So let's just play the demo and have a look.
Cool, so if you can just talk us through what people are going to be seeing there on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, so this is going into the screen for the actual capture screen. So what we're doing in this demonstration is we're capturing from a scan. So Craig is currently putting in the invoices into his scanner and it's loading.
Okay.
And then you can see it's scanning.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That didn't take long.
No, not long at all. So I think he scanned 3 different pages, but what it does is it scans both sides of the page, just in case there's stuff on the back. But if it's blank, then it disregards it.
Yep. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's face it, if you're not scanning both sides, then you're going to have to pre-sort all your invoices in advance. Exactly. You're going to have piles for 1-page invoice, 2-page invoice, double-sided, all that chaos that comes with that, dividers or barcodes, as they used to do with the old technology. So taking a massive step out in the preparation for actually capturing the invoices from a scanner.
Exactly. So that's all there is in this demo. Shall we quickly talk over a few other ways of capturing your invoices into your system?
Yeah, well, I think you've already mentioned a few of them there anyway. So we're showing a scan from a piece of paper. So really traditional, your mailroom have opened up your paper in the morning. They've taken out all the envelopes, taken off your paper clips and your staples and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they've then sent them around to the AP department. And at that stage, the job there is to sort them into different types of invoice or whatever it may be, whether it's 1-page, 2-page, multi-page, all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe put dividers between them and then scan them through in batches. And that's a really traditional way of doing it, and that's what we've just seen there really quickly, just the actual scanning element of it. Yeah. Other sources, well, we know that nowadays businesses are seeing their invoices in more and more variety of formats that they're receiving them. And I think a recent piece of research that came out shows that actually receiving them by email has almost caught up with the total volume of paper invoices that are now being used in the UK. They're both sat at around about that 35% mark. I think that's really interesting to see that more and more people are moving towards a far more digital process in terms of sending emails in. Now, and as you've spoken to people on the phone before, what do so many companies with a manual process do when they receive an email?
Well, when they receive an email, they print off the email.
Excellent work.
Maybe if they've got something in place, they scan it back in or they type it back in.
Wonderful.
Not great.
Not brilliant.
Not great. And then they file the piece of paper, obviously. It's got to be filed somewhere.
Of course.
File an email.
No. Most important that we've still got a piece of paper, probably with a coffee stain on and a couple of stamps on it because it's been received and approved. Yeah, wonderful. So with Streamline for Invoices, email capture, it pulls from email immediately. There's no need for anybody to have a manual touch on a received email. Now that doesn't matter whether it's an attachment to an email, body of an email, it doesn't matter what is attached to the email even, in terms of PDF, JPEG, all that kind of thing. So it can be any format that's coming through. That the system will automatically pull from that, and I think actually that's probably something that we'll go into in another session in a bit more depth around that. Other formats that they could be received in?
So as you said, image files, JPEGs, PDFs. It can also come through the Supplier Portal,
yep,
which we'll talk about later on, as you said.
Okay, so giving people a chance to actually upload that invoice themselves as an image or as text or whatever it may be. The system to then pull that back out.
Yeah, or for your supplier's system to do it automatically and send it through the
and push it in.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! Even easier. Let's face it, most modern ERPs are able to create and generate the invoice and push it out. So if you've got something that can then connect that way, then again, you're saving time, not just for you then, but you're also saving time for your suppliers. They're not having to then, let's face it, print them out and stick them in an envelope and stick a stamp or a franking mark on it and put it in the post.
Yeah, and you've also got your big data interchanges, so your EDI sort of feeds.
Yep.
Big XML spreadsheets full of
rows and rows and rows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we still speak to people today who, the first thing you say, so if you looked at automation and say, well, actually, we've moved to EDI. Great. So then what are you doing? Well, actually, what we're then doing is we're then going through it row by row, making sure that it does all actually tally up. And you think, my God. But again, a platform... our platform is able to do that. It's able to go through, but it's also able to retrospectively generate an image of the invoice as well if it knows that supplier and it's able to do that, which gives you a far easier way if you need to send that out for approvals or workflows or whatever it may be for the user to see an image of the invoice rather than just a line of text.
Much easier for audits as well.
Oh God, yes. Much easier on the eye, just I think on every step of the process. So you mentioned EDI there. If anybody is still using fax, and thankfully very few people are, in theory we can deal with that as well, although that really is the minority. Thank the Lord it's the minority. Not many people, I guess, will have fond memories of using fax machines. I mean, if you could ever get it to dial anybody, that was a mere miracle, let alone actually have it received on the other end and print out a piece of paper. So we've... well, there we go then. See, you're living the dream. Trust me, you don't want to. They weren't pleasant. So what have we got there? So we've got scanned, we've got email, regardless of your format that's on the email, file capture as well. Right. So that's another option. So if people want to have it where stuff's being deposited into a file, into a location on a server, it can pull directly from there as well. Again, the pros and cons of that can be weighed up. I suppose at least you've got a central location there where everything is starting its live point from if you've scanned it in to go to so maybe there's some benefit there from that. Personally, I don't really see much point in adding a step into the process, but it's there. It's another option that people do pursue.
And then I think another type of invoicing usually thought of in this sort of instance would be e-invoicing, which obviously it sounds like it's going to be something completely different, but really in reality it's pretty much what we've been talking about. Plus a few other bells and whistles. Yeah,
well, it's interesting as well. E-invoicing, it's been being talked about now since, as long as I've been in the industry, as the next big thing. It's going to revolutionise how businesses engage with each other. The reality is it's a supplier portal. And in fact, in the it wasn't in the Making Tax Digital stuff. It was in the duty to report legislation. They actually stipulated that e-invoicing had to include a portal element. It had to include a way where a supplier could digitally upload information to you. It wasn't as simple as just getting them by email. That's just not the way it built it and confirmed what e-invoicing should be considered as. The other thing as well, quickly to reference on the EDI kind of feed, which you mentioned there with these big XML files, is actually getting smaller suppliers to engage in that sort of process. It's really hard because it's actually quite time consuming for smaller businesses, because they're likely going to have to create this by hand and then send it to you, which for them it's actually far easier to probably hit print on their ERP and issue the invoice that way. So a lot of companies that say, we're going to EDI, actually the reality is they might get a handful of their suppliers to send in the invoices via that. Now that handful of suppliers may equate to about 80% of the total invoices that are being received as well, over total volume. That's that 80-20 rule. But the 20%, the tail, that's where the time is being spent, because these are small suppliers, one-off suppliers, people who you may not have them set up in your supplier masterization, that kind of thing, that you're then having to really work hard to process that. They may not have POs against them and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on then from just that initial point of capturing the information, as we said there, there's a raft of ways that we can do it. The next element in the demo then is showing the data that's being captured.
Yeah, so basically, in the life of an AP clerk of the future, I guess.
Of the now.
So it logs into to the platform. This is now Streamline for Invoices. So we've gone away from omnichannel capture, and we've logged into Streamline. So you can see that there's some tasks that have been flagged at the top and some invoices that are waiting to be processed.
Okay.
So once they click through that, it loads up all the invoices that are waiting. So you can see there's two there that have been completely read and matched with the system. So they're ready to pay.
So that's not just about the capture, that's actually gone right the way through. That's matched the supplier information, it's matched the purchase order information. So these were good, clean invoices. When they've been received, the system's been able to match all of the required information for this company's business rules, and actually that invoice, nobody's even going to look at it. I can see there's a handful there as well where there are exceptions that need to be handled. Can we just have a look at one of those possibly?
Yeah, I think we're going into one now. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So you can see on the screen here there's some red boxes.
Okay.
Which is where it doesn't match with the PO that it's matched the document to.
Okay, so really quickly then, because this is something that I do want us to talk about here, it's not that it hasn't captured the information on the invoice, it's that it's failed to match the internal business rule with a purchase order that's already open.
That's correct.
Right, okay. So that's really, really key here, because actually one of the biggest features and one of the most important elements of the of Streamline for Invoice is the capture quality. We are virtually alone in our marketplace. We will guarantee people that we will capture a minimum of 85% of the field data on every invoice that's coming through to them, an 85% blanket rule on invoices that we will capture and extract that data. And that's key, because in any demonstration scenario that we have, we will happily process an invoice for the person that we're demonstrating to without ever seeing that invoice before, because we are that confident and that comfortable in that capture rate. And not only that, that capture rate will go up as well. And I think that the last I heard was that the overall capture rate for all of our customers using Streamline for Invoices, field capture rate, was sat at about 96% for everybody. And I mean, that's phenomenal. That's the quality of what we're able to see, read and handle off of the invoice, and that's just the capture piece of it. That's before we even start trying to run any business rules or matching any of the information.
And because of the machine learning integrated into the capture piece, it's only going to get better through time as well.
Exactly that. It's not going to drop off, which traditional platforms, what you found is that actually that the capture rate would drop off if you didn't have somebody who was very capable of managing the system, or you weren't paying a third party to manage the system for you. The other really important element here is, and again, this kind of only sort of touches on it, but the supplier information on here has been completely validated. Okay, that's not a problem point for this, to the point where it's even been able to pick up the fact that there is a PO, but it just doesn't match, the lines don't match on it, and that's using CAS, Capture as a Service.
Yes, yeah, it is. So if you can see the actual issue here is, I believe this is an invoice which is part of an order.
Okay.
So it's matching with the PO, but the PO has got lots of other things on it.
Yep.
Because this is only part of that order.
Yeah.
So that's why it's flagged it up, because it's not for the whole order. So you can see there's a balance here of minus £244, which means that it's lacking that much currency basically in the invoice, because the invoice is only for 100 times 1. So,
excellent. Okay. Yeah.
So do you want to? I assume he's going to show how to correct that.
Yeah. Let's have a quick look at the correction then, the correction process. So as you've already mentioned, it's highlighted where the problems are. So you're not having to second guess. Why is this invoice stopped? Why aren't we just going straight through the system? Where's the problem? As well, that's the other thing. It's flagged it there. It's really obvious. Nice red boxes to make it easy. So when the user is flagged this invoice to handle the exception, they know exactly what they're looking for and where the issue lies.
Yeah. Right. So let's just see. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, he clicks on the line and then just presses delete, and it removes it.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
That's simple. So it's highlighted that actually one of the lines that was on that PO will give us the answer that we're looking for and actually does equate to this invoice. The other two lines aren't relevant to this particular invoice. Now, interestingly on that one as well, that doesn't mean that we're closing the PO off.
No.
So when another invoice comes through from this supplier, we'll still be, and quotes the same PO number, we'll be able to reference back to that PO and reference those other lines that have not been confirmed as received. Of course, what would be easier is if things had been GRN'd as well, I suppose, and it was doing a three-way match.
Of course.
But, you know, it's an ideal world that would be living in.
Yeah, and I think if we move through this demo as well, here I think this is the other half of that order.
Oh, okay.
So we got that one, but this one's missing the PO in this invoice.
Okay.
So it couldn't match it to the order.
Right.
So
of course, for the user that's looking at this, the chances are they probably received these back to back anyway, and they've been in front of them, so they're going to immediately recognise that actually, oh, hang on a minute, it's just the supplier's been a bit daft and issued us two invoices instead of one against the PO, and hence why we're missing the PO number.
Yeah, so the example he's given here as well, he's also said you could just reject it straight away.
Yeah, no PO, no pay.
Exactly.
It's a really good policy to implement, and I think more and more companies out there are going down that road as well. I think it just makes so much sense. And in fact, if you reject it in our platform, what that can do is that can immediately send an email to the supplier saying, we've rejected your invoice, this is why, please resubmit it. And I think it can even include an attachment with the original invoice on it as well to show why we've rejected it, and rather than it just being we've rejected your invoice, please resubmit, it'll be your invoice has been rejected, you failed to quote a PO on there, etc, please find attached. Now the supplier can just flip that, they can add the PO onto that, return it back to the inbox, and of course if you've got the omnichannel capture, it's going to pull that straight from the email, it'll process it through. And this time when it comes back in, it's only going to have the two lines on it. It's going to match it against the two lines that were left on the PO. It already knows who the supplier and all the rest of it is, and away it goes.
Yeah.
Assuming the supplier doesn't make another mess of the invoice submission anyway.
Exactly. And I think what he showed here was when he was matching it with the POs, I think it's matched any PO lines that are waiting to be matched.
Yep.
And I believe are filtered by the company who submitted the invoice.
Okay.
Which obviously only shows a few.
Yes.
This company. But
Yeah.
It could be more. And you can then filter it down by more. And then he approves it.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's a very quick look at capture there from a scanned image.
Yeah.
As we've touched on there, you know, that's only one of the many formats they can be received in. There's a lot going on there. The capture rate is incredible. We've been able to pull everything back off of those particular invoices, those sample invoices, which is amazing. You know, that sort of quality of capture rate and a quality that maintains over time is absolutely fantastic. It's peace of mind for somebody using this. They don't have to worry that that's going to tail away, that after a couple of years it's going to start degrading, the quality is going to start dropping off, and it's going to stay at these high levels of capture. So next up on the demonstration, where are we looking at next then?
We could look at the Supplier Portal.
Okay. So we touched on Supplier Portal very briefly, and this is offering your suppliers a chance to actually upload those invoices themselves rather than having to write you an email and attach it, or in the most horrible of scenarios, print it out as a piece of paper, stick it in an envelope, trust it to Royal Mail, hope it gets there, and actually probably then be on the phone to you 3 days later saying, have you received my invoice, when are you going to pay it? This gives them that visibility. It gives them a piece of technology that allows them to be far more efficient, to be far more digital, to be far more environmentally friendly as well. Recent article that I did actually on back end of last year, looking at the sheer cost of processing pieces of paper just for a medium-sized organisation. I think that was they received about 40,000 invoices a year. It wasn't vast, and yet the impact was enormous on that side of it. So go on, let's go through here to the demo then.
Right, so as we can see here, we're logging into the Supplier Portal, which again, these are all in browser because it's in the cloud. Yep. So you don't have to install any software.
Yeah.
It's all in a browser. So as we watch. So we're looking through the supply master data, I believe, at the moment.
Okay. So this is interesting. So the reference on this is that this is actually only advisory. The supplier is not making a change to the data that you hold on your ERP. What they're doing is they're advising of the fact that something has changed in their business, address details or whatever it may be. It's advisory. You can then validate that yourselves as a department. Now, actually, with Capture as a Service, that validation becomes almost irrelevant because Capture as a Service will automatically be updating. If this company's updating something, we've probably seen invoices for this particular organisation across a multitude of our customers. Yeah. And using some machine learning algorithms behind that, the system's been able to detect that there's been a change in address, for argument's sake. And it's updated our repository. That's 600,000 records that we've got sat in the cloud that we match against to start with for supplier records. That will be updating automatically. But this is great because it means that for you as an organisation, you can keep your master data up to speed should you wish to do so. Now, the reality is that most organisations, even if they are claiming that they clean their master data every month or 6 weeks or 3 months, they're probably not. And it's a huge point of risk and a big point of contention for a lot of organisations. And actually, when you sit them down and you really go into it and you show them the errors that are in that master data, it can be pretty horrifying. You know, duplicate accounts, fake accounts, and all this kind of stuff going on in there.
Right, so moving on to, this is the invoices sort of overview. So as a supplier, you can check out all the invoices that you've submitted to this company, and sort of get an update on where they are in the system. So as you can see on the right hand side, you've got sort of timeline. So whether they've been received, whether they're being processed, they're ready to pay, and if they've been paid.
Which for you as an organisation means you're getting them off the phone.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, the vast majority of incoming calls into accounts payable are going to be suppliers chasing their invoice. Where is it? Have you received it? Have you processed it? When am I going to be paid? Has it been authorised? Etc. Etc. Etc.
Yeah, and you can see the image of the invoice as well, of course.
There we go.
I think also theoretically you could add any stage you want into that sort of timeline. So be as explicit as you like. You probably don't want them to know that it's with Jeff in accounts.
No.
Because that might induce them to pick up the phone.
And speak to Jeff in accounts. Say, hey, Jeff, you know, we've been working together for many, many years. Any chance you can just squeeze this through real quick? I could do with that cash in the bank. But actually, it's interesting because the other thing that you don't want to do is you also don't want to necessarily give them an explicit date on which they're going to be paid. No. That can open up, again, that can of worms, that person on the phone saying, well, why am I being paid on this date? I sent you the invoice on this date. Our agreement is for X number of days, that kind of thing. Not that I am condoning at any level that you should pay anybody late. And in fact, if you're using a piece of software like Streamline, in fact, you should be paying people early and trying to get those early payment discounts, getting those 1% returns on your spend and that kind of thing, and actually getting that profit coming back into your business.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can also have communication between your accounts department and the supplier. So we can see here like an instant messenger sort of format. Where you can talk back and forth. So if they need extra information, this is how they can get back to them.
Well, that's brilliant as well there, because from the perspective of one, you want to get them off the phone, but you still want to be able to engage, but when it suits you.
Yeah.
So for your team that are sat there in accounts payable that are going through stuff, actually they don't necessarily want to be disturbed while they're mid-flow on doing something. What they want to be able to do is have the flexibility, much like we have with email, where in fact you can actually just close Outlook for half an hour if you need to focus on a task, and then you're not going to get sidetracked by little pinging messages or what have you in the corner. Similarly with this, actually you only have to handle this when you want to. And when you've dedicated time for it, you may actually say to your team, well, you're only actually going to log into this and check for any messages between, I don't know, 9 and 10 in the morning and between 4 and 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Far more focused and far less disruptive than ring, 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 and that phone going off and having to engage with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were then asking for the supplier to add some more information, they can upload attachments. Just through here. It's very simple.
So additional details. So I suppose it's another way whereby if they've uploaded an invoice into the portal, but it hasn't got a PO number for, as we saw earlier, if that had come through a portal, this is another way that you could handle that, rather than just rejecting it, or rather than having to manually correct it yourself so it gets processed. You can leave a message on here: invoice number, please. Invoice number X does not have a PO number. Please resubmit with that.
Yeah. So I think here what we're looking at is payments that have gone through.
So transactional history as well.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant, because one of the biggest bugbears that people have is reconciliation statements. At the end of each period, having to go through these great long pages showing every invoice number, PO and balance, and making sure that actually you haven't double paid, overpaid, underpaid, missing a payment, whatever that may be. That's happening on those statements. If your suppliers can actually log in here and they can see exactly what they've been paid, all they're then engaging with you on is the exceptions. So it's another volume of work that's being removed from that monthly, quarterly, or whatever the agreement you have with those particular suppliers is.
Exactly. I think that sort of covers most of the supplier portal. Is there anything you want to add?
Brilliant. No, I don't think so. I think that was a pretty good look through that. I don't think there's much more that we can go into on the supplier portal. And obviously we touched on the capture element. We've touched on CAS as well. I think probably what would be really good for us to go back and do is to have a look at a couple of the other elements here. And I know that the analytics is something that's really quite important to organisations. That ability to deep dive into information and data that's been captured. Don't forget, data is the new currency. For so many businesses, the more data you have and the more you're able to use it, see it, manipulate it and deep dive into it, the more benefit you can bring to your organisation. Do we go into the analytics in this demo at all?
Yeah, we do, coming up. So, everything that's done through the system, everything that's automatically read, everything that's processed using the Streamline for Invoices, all the data is obviously collected, and you can see it through the analytics package.
Okay.
So, you could ask for anything.
Right.
Anything that you could imagine.
So what have we got in this demo? What sort of, do we do any drill downs here at all?
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen now, we've got some invoices received, just a number.
Yep.
Invoices currently in progress, how many have been rejected, how many have been paid.
Okay.
And then at the bottom here, we've got the distribution of invoices in progress by service. So which part of the company is waiting to process these invoices.
Interesting. Okay, so what would be probably an interesting element there for somebody who's looking at this, and whether we go into it here or not, is actually where you're looking at the different departments and where stuff is bottlenecking.
Yes.
That's that really interesting element there, is why does... And actually that graph showing that one particular department is horrendously out of touch when compared to the others. And why is that? Why are they in progress? I mean, they may not have a no PO, no pay policy. So actually what they're finding is that the vast majority of the invoices to this department are missing a PO. They're not following the business rules. They're not, or maybe they're not GRNing it. Maybe that's what you've got in place. But it allows you as an AP manager, finance controller, that, to then go to either your management or to go to those departments and say, guys, you are causing a backlog, you are causing an issue, you are stopping us being able to free up cash to invest elsewhere in the business. We're having to sit on piles of money just because we don't know when your invoices come in how quickly we're going to be able to process them and pay them. We've given you the tools to make this easier. You need to be doing this, and they can start to push that through and make everybody's lives easier and free up that cash flow. Stop having to sit on such a large amount of money in the bank just because, well, what if we get an invoice from it? I can't see the name there. For what if another marketing invoice comes in and we know that they never go straight through? They're going to take us ages to process, and we're going to have to handle that. I probably should have chosen marketing being in marketing, but the premise remains.
Yeah. You could then put forward some further training. Or just look at the processes. So what else have we got here? You've got just a straight up list of what invoices there are with some information you can drill down further into. He's clicked into one of the columns there. Yeah, so it's taken the number down, invoices received, so this is by that account.
Supplier or account or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so it's gone down to 19, 15 of which are in process, 4 have been paid obviously.
Okay. So actually, this may even be highlighting then. So for you, as again the finance manager who's drilling into this data, and what was great there, you can click just about anywhere and you can drill further in. But actually, this might be highlighting that the problem's with a supplier rather than with a particular department,
Exactly, yeah.
or maybe it's actually a mutually self-destruction setup whereby actually the marketing department never raises a PO, the supplier never bothers to ask if there is a PO, and then they don't even bother putting a proper invoice number on because hey, there was no PO, they obviously don't care. You know, that kind of really, really bad process and mindset that can be slipped into. It may be simply that supplier wasn't aware that you had a requirement for a PO on everything, and even though they had received the PO from the department, they hadn't quoted it on that invoice like we saw earlier. And actually, rather than you having a no PO, no pay and rejecting it straight back to them, that's sat with a user to be processed when they have the time to do so.
So this shows invoices near time limit. So ones that are probably the most urgent ones that you need to be looking at. There you go, number of invoices per day have overrun, and then you've got colour coded here how many days they've overrun.
So that's really interesting when you think duty to report legislation and the fact that all these organisations are going to having to make public whether they're paying on time or overtime or paying early, what their standard terms and agreements are and how many of their agreements fall within those and that kind of thing. This kind of dashboard is going to give you that visibility as a finance manager, and you can then go away and look at why this is happening and make those relevant changes again, drilling into that data further. Is it particular suppliers? Is it particular departments? Where's the gap? Where's the fall down? Where's that bottleneck happening that means that we are potentially going to be paying a large portion of invoices late, or at the very least just bang on time rather than paying them early, and again arguing for early payment discounts and all that kind of good stuff.
Exactly, and also I guess here you could get the right insight in order to submit your duty to report on time, or as quick as you can, I guess, in as least time as possible.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big headaches that people have, is that they're trying to pull information in from various different packages, ERP and a doc management system where they've got the original contracts and all that kind of thing, whereas if you can highlight against your agreements with your suppliers, then that's going to give you a far smoother ride in that process.
Definitely, and as you can see here, again, he's drilled down by supplier.
Okay.
So he's selected this supplier, there's 2 invoices near the time limit, and a few have overrun.
So it's showing a little bit of history there as well, isn't it? It's not just showing what's still pending, it's showing what's happened previously.
Yeah. Okay, so this is more of a drill down into the processing of the invoices, I mean. Right. So you can see you've got the percentage of invoices that have come through that have POs on them. And you can see other reasons why they haven't been reconciled automatically.
Okay, so what are we seeing there? Obviously we've got no PO.
No PO, potentially no date, some of the quantities are out.
So based on your business needs and your business rules and that kind of thing.
Exactly, I mean this is all obviously customizable. Right, and then at the bottom again, by company, so by supplier, who's sending in the wrong things. So.
Brilliant, and if your AP clerks aren't just sat there busy typing data from a piece of paper into an ERP all day long, they could be spending time dealing with these suppliers and actually engaging with them, trying to train them and educate them to make this process smoother. And that's in everyone's best interest, not just yours as an organisation, where you're looking to get more benefit from your money and more stretch from your money, but also for your supplier. They want to be paid early, or at the very least on time. And if you can highlight why that's not happening and what they can do to change that, that's going to be enormously beneficial.
Yeah, being able to hold them accountable for their mistakes instead of them blaming you for not paying them on time, for example. You're going to have a better leg to stand on there. So here we've got disputes.
Okay.
So again, disputes by supplier.
Yep.
Suppliers that are outside the deadline for sending a receipt.
Okay.
Amount of money in dispute, number of invoices that are involved in that amount of money.
Yep.
And reasons.
Yep. So again, from a cash flow perspective, that amount of money that's in dispute, that's a really good insight to have. You know what your potential liabilities are there, or at least maybe that's not all of them, but at least you've got a good insight into a percentage of it. At the very least, you can see that from an accounts payable perspective, this is my liability. This is how much money I may have to shell out, assuming all of these invoices are actually cleared through the process.
What's next? Okay, so this is more of the reading rates of the system.
Okay, so this is brilliant. So this is looking at how much information was captured over time as well. And these are real-time dashboards. People can log into these. They can, get in touch with us, and subject to them having the need to do so, and us, wanting to be working with them in that way, we can show them live dashboard as well. What's happening now in our system in real time. I'm not sure if this was that. In fact, it looks like it might even have been from the real log through there. We've got that 90% invoice read rate, which probably isn't far off. That may just be the demo platform.
I believe it is, yeah. So we've got 90% invoice reading rate. Here 87% is of supplier identification. So it's how many times it's managed to match the supplier with your system, with your data.
Which is great, because potentially if you've got the right rules in place with your suppliers, i.e. no PO, no pay, so they're always quoting a PO and all that kind of stuff, then actually what you're saying here is fundamentally, unless you've got some reason to stop these because of value or internal business process, 87% of those invoices will have been able to have been processed straight through without touching them, because we will have been able to capture everything that's there and validate the supplier information and process that through ready for the payment.
Yeah, and as you can see on the left here, I think that's 90% of invoices that have been automated and ready to pay.
Perfect.
Yeah, and you can also see the reading rate per field, so what part of the invoice it's trying to read, and if it's struggling in any specific location.
Which I would imagine regularly will be PO.
Probably,
because it's just not there.
Yeah,
or GRN maybe if you've got a three-way match requirement. That might be the other area. Guys, we hope that you found this really interesting, and that actually being able to have a look at the solution, even just these snippets of it, might have whet your appetite a little bit to want to see more. We're going to come back again in a couple of weeks' time. I think what we may try and do is actually build out and grab some more screen stuff around the various different types of capture, and probably drill a bit more into capture as a service, the CAS element as well, and how that works and how that's so important. As I mentioned early on, we will demo for somebody, and we won't ask to see invoices in advance. We won't set up master data in advance. You can sit there, you can bring them in at the start of the session, but we won't have them from you then. We will take those invoices from you at the moment you want us to show them going through the system, or the moment where in the demo we want to show them going through the system, which is normally quite early on, to be fair. But the premise remains, we're not presetting anything. There's no smoke and mirrors there. We're not asking for them a week in advance, so we can pre-build the supplier master data and we can fine-tune the engines to make sure we're capturing everything. We'll do it there on the day, in the flesh, completely as we go. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. Like I say, I really hope this whet the appetite, and hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for the next one of the ITESOFT Insider Views.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Bye for now.